Kingdom of Heaven is a 2005 epic historical drama film, directed and produced by Ridley Scott, and stars Orlando Bloom in the leading role of Balian of Ebelin, to who the movie is focused. The movie portrays the events surrounding the fall of Jerusalem in 1187, but how true to history is this movie? The movie opens in medieval France. Balian, a blacksmith who is haunted by his wife's recent suicide after the death of their unborn child, meets a group of crusaders who visits his village. Their leader introduces himself as Balian's father, Baron Godfrey, and asks him to return with him to the Holy Land, but Balian declines. Later that night, Balian kills his half-brother, the town priest, after discovering that he had ordered Balian's wife's body beheaded before burial. The next day, Balian joins his father's group, hoping to gain salvation for himself and his wife in Jerusalem. It is through Balian's eyes that the audience is introduced to the Crusades, learning about the history of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and are shown the divisions with the kingdom that lead to its destruction. The real Balian was not a French artisan, but a prominent lord in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Balian was the youngest son of Balian of Ebelin and brother of Hugh and Baldwin. His father, a knight in the county of Jaffa, had been rewarded with the lordship of Ebelin after the revolt of Hugh II of Lepusset. Balian married Helvis of Ramla, heiress to the wealthy lordship of Ramla. Balian's name was also Balian, but he seems to have adopted the name to the Old French Balian. He is sometimes known as Balian the Younger or Balian II, when his father is also referred to as Balian. After the death of Balian's elder brother Hugh in 1169, the castle of Ebelin passed to the next brother, Baldwin. Baldwin, preferring to remain lord of Ramla, gave it to Balian. Balian held Ebelin as a vassal of his brother, and indirectly as a rear vassal of the king, from whom Baldwin held Ramla. The characters of Godfrey of Ebelin, Balian's father in the movie, and the Hospitaller were wholly invented. Other characters have also been heavily changed from historical accounts. The movie wanted the character Sibylla to be stronger and wiser, and was reimagined to fit the image of an exotic Middle Eastern woman, and as resenting her marriage to Guy of Lusignan. However, the historical Sibylla was devoted to Guy and belonged to a distinctly Western class that sought to set themselves apart from the Middle Eastern culture. Sibylla was a devout Christian, and the portrayal of a queen having a lover, which would go in contrast to Christianity's teachings on the matter, is utterly baseless. Sibylla's first marriage was to William Longsword of Montferrat in late 1176, but within a year he died, leaving her pregnant and in possession of the county of Jaffa and Ascalon. A second marriage, to Guy of Lusignan, was arranged in 1180 by her brother, King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem. This was likely done to foil a coup planned by Raymond III of Tripoli, who in the movie is wrongly portrayed as a staunch loyalist to Baldwin. But the marriage deeply divided the nobility. By 1183, King Baldwin had become completely disabled, as well as disillusioned with Guy's character and ability to lead. To prevent Guy's ascension to the throne, he had Sibylla's son crowned as co-king and attempted to separate Sibylla from Guy, but she refused. King Baldwin in the movie is portrayed as passive, genderless, and bound to his chamber, his face covered by a mask. But contemporary accounts describe him as a young man, vigorous in spite of his leprosy, and there are no accounts of him wearing a mask to conceal his illness. One of the key characters in Kingdom of Heaven is Guy of Lusignan, though, like most other characters, his character has been tweaked to cast him as the true villain of the movie. The Guy of Lusignan from the movie had been expelled from France for murder and had fled to the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Later he married Sibylla and became king of Jerusalem after the death of Sibilla's brother. He is shown as a radical anti-Muslim and is closely aligned with the Knights Templar. In the movie, Guy repeatedly made horrible decisions. Each of the decisions was driven by his hatred of the Muslims and his desire to expel them from the Holy Land. Essentially, his choices led them to the Battle of Hattin, the slaughter of Jerusalem's army, and the Crusaders' expulsion from Jerusalem. The real Guy of Lusignan was a French Poitevin knight, the son of Hugh VIII of Lusignan. He went to Jerusalem at some date between 1173 and 1180, initially as a pilgrim, and may have arrived with the French Crusades of 1179. Having arrived in the Holy Land, where his brother Amaury of Lusignan was already prominent, Guy was hastily married to Sibilla in 1180 to prevent a political incident within the kingdom. As the health of his brother-in-law Baldwin IV of Jerusalem deteriorated, Guy was appointed by Sibilla as regent for his stepson, Baldwin V of Jerusalem. Baldwin IV died in 1185, followed shortly by Baldwin V in 1186, leading to the succession of Sibilla and Guy to the throne of Jerusalem. Guy's reign was marked by increased hostilities with the Ayyubids ruled by Saladin, culminating in the Battle of Hattin in July 1187, during which Guy was captured. Following a year of imprisonment in Damascus, Guy was finally released by Saladin. The movie shows Balian and Guy as enemies, and this is somewhat true. The men in real life had a complicated relationship. Occasionally they were enemies, and at other times allies. In one of the movie's key scenes, Guy and his allies attack a Muslim caravan. They then kill every man, woman and child in the caravan to break their agreement with Saladin. This attack forced Saladin to invade the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The movie accurately portrays Jerusalem's defence by Balian and his forces. Balian was an outstanding swordsman, a brave leader and an outstanding tactician in the movie. Bloom's character became the commander of the Christian garrison of Jerusalem before the Battle of Hattin. But the historical accounts record that Balian was in command of the rear guard at Hattin, but the Crusader army was completely defeated. An anonymous account recorded at the time claims that Balian fled the field in the middle of the battle, trampling Christians and Turks and the cross in the process, though this is not mentioned in other accounts. Balian fled to Tyre, where he feared for the safety of his wife and children, who were in Jerusalem. Leaving Tyre, Balian asked Saladin for permission to return through the lines to Jerusalem to escort his wife and their children to Tripoli. Saladin allowed this, provided that Balian leave the city and take an oath to never again raise arms against him. When Balian and his small group of knights arrived in the city, the inhabitants begged them to stay, and Balian was absolved of his oath to Saladin by Patriarch Heraclius, who argued that the greater need of Christendom was stronger than his oath to a non-Christian. Balian was recruited to lead the defence of the city, but he found that there were under 14, possibly as few as 2, other knights there, so he created 60 new knights from the ranks of the burgesses. There was no grand knighting of all inhabitants like in the movie. In the movie, Balian defies the defence of Jerusalem that effectively beat off countless attacks by the Muslims. Balian was the commander, but the movie diminishes the importance of the other leaders who were also pivotal to Jerusalem's defence. Balian is essentially a combination of these characters for this battle. Balian and Saladin reach a negotiated settlement that ended the bloody siege. This is true. The Christians did surrender the city on terms in 1187. In one of the most memorable scenes, we see the main character leading the Christians safely out of Jerusalem, as he hands it over to Saladin. This actually happened, and the Muslims did allow the garrison and the Christian population to leave the city unmolested. In the movie, after Jerusalem surrendered to the Muslim Sultan, Balian returns to Europe with Sibilla, He is shown as living happily as a blacksmith in his native village and refusing English knights' appeals to go on the Third Crusade. But in reality, after the fall of Jerusalem, Balian stayed in the region and became one of the Crusader state's leaders. He participated in the Third Crusade and was a key advisor to Richard the Lionheart. The movie shows the main character as having a good relationship with the Muslims, and indeed, in real life, Balian of Eblan had a good relationship with Saladin. As for Sibylla, she remained married to Guy and never left him. Ultimately, she succumbed to a plague while camping with Guy in 1190, dying at 30. Despite the movie's mixed reviews, it is still entertaining, with the setting being largely accurate to history, but where it changes is with the characters, who at best only share the names of their historical counterparts. If you have not yet seen Kingdom of Heaven, I recommend watching it, but if you want to gain a true insight into the Crusader world, I recommend reading the medieval chronicler William of Tyre.